Haiti is one of the poorest countries in the world. In fact, they say it is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. Have you ever wondered how in the world can Haiti share an island with the Dominican Republic? And you can go to the DR and turn up and go 70 miles in one direction and see a place where people are still dying from E. coli. Well, I'll tell you why, because in the 1700s, when the African slaves came to the island of Haiti, and they introduced an idea called voodoo. And if you go to Haiti, voodoo is actually recognized as a religion. And there was a man named Papa Doc. Are y'all listening to me? Who actually had a seance about John F. Kennedy and had a doll of him and stuck pins in the back of his head. Are you listening to me? 44 to be exact. Isn't it amazing that he got shot in the back of the head at the age of 44? And so we look at Haiti and we ask, why is it one of the poorest countries in the world? It is not because it is full of ignorant black people. They are as smart and as intelligent as you are, but there is a spirit that has set on the region. And if you want to know what's going on,
how you doing? I wanted to quickly respond to Pastor Keon Henderson. I'm irate, I'm pissed off, and it's because a preacher is supposed to preach the truth, not perpetuate lies against a nation that is already struggling economically and through natural disasters and with influence from many other powerful nations. So to Pastor Henderson, if you're going to preach the gospel must be rooted in the truth. So you said that there's a spirit that governs Haiti, that Satan has run amok, and the reason why Haiti is in its economic conditions is because it's poor, as you stated. It's because of this spirit that is set upon the nation. So since you attempted to provide a theological reference to help articulate Haiti's condition, let me give you a theological response based on biblical content that we all believe in. According to Mark, the Gospel of Jesus Christ, chapter 3, starting at 23, it says that Jesus called them over to him and began to speak to them in parables. And this is what Jesus said: how can Satan drive out Satan? If a kingdom is divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. If a house is divided against itself, that house cannot stand. And if Satan opposes himself and is divided, he cannot stand. His end has come. So according to this text, Satan cannot cast out Satan. So my question to you, Pastor Keon, you brought up the 1700s. You talked about the Haitian Revolution. You talked about voodoo. You talked about the spirits. So if Haiti is full of the spirit of Satan, demonic spirits that possess the land, that's part of its conditions, then who were the Haitians fighting during the revolution? You have to answer that question, because Satan cannot cast out Satan. Satan's house cannot be divided amongst itself. So if Haitians were fighting for their freedom, they were fighting for their liberation against Spain, against the French, against U.S. influence, then who was the spirit over France? Who was the spirit over Spain? Who was the spirit over the colonial powers that were raping women, that were destroying Black African families, that were literally created a genocide that wiped out the Taino Native Americans, the indigenous people? Who was the spirit? What spirit was it? Because if Satan is in Haiti, then what is in America? What is in France? What is in Spain? They stole Africans from their house. They dragged them and raped them and divided them and made sure that mothers and fathers never saw each other again. They hung people from trees to make examples from them. They cut their limbs off. That was not the Haitian people. That was not the African people. That was not black people from western part of African continent. That was the nations that within your message, you're perpetuating them as godly, as God's chosen nation, as God's chosen people, as these divine angelistic people, while Haiti that fought against these tragedies are demonized. So, Pastor Henderson, have you studied your history? Simon Bolivar is given a lot of credit for the work that he did to liberate South America. But if you did your homework, you would have known that when Simon Bolivar was against the wall and he was going to be defeated, he went to where? Haiti. And he asked for their support. They gave him weapons. They gave him arms. They gave him support. They gave him troops. They gave him everything. And the only promise that the Haitian people told Simon Bolivar that he needed to do was make sure that the people were free. So today, when we talk about a free Venezuela, a free Peru, a free Colombia, a free Panama, a free Bolivia, it would not be possible without the Haitian people that today you call a spirit of Satan that's over the land. The only spirit that we need to check today is the spirit in you. What spirit told you to preach a message of demonizing a group of people who are already in tough situations without the proper facts? Huh? What spirit led you to think that you can preach the gospel of Jesus Christ rooted in demonizing a group of people that the Lord has conditioned us and commanded us to support? Huh? Last time I read my Bible, there was a command for us to stand with the least of these, not to open our big mouths and put them down. If you're going to tell the truth, then tell the whole truth. It was the Haitian people that fought in the American War, Revolutionary War. Was that Satan helping the United States? If it wasn't for Haiti, we would not have the Louisiana Purchase, because it was the war and the revolution that was draining France that made them sell their land to the United States. So if you're going to tell the truth, you have to tell the whole truth. And Haiti is not a poor nation. It is in some dire economic situations, but when you look at the history of Haiti, they were one of the wealthiest colonies in the world. Sugarcane was growing in all sides of the land. It's a country that has gold. It is a country that has oil. It's a country that has minerals. It's a country that has natural resources that have been plundered by the West, by France, by Canada, by the United States. And the fact that you can even preach a message like the one you did last week shows that you are clueless of basic history. Don't take my word for it. Go read the New York Times, who released close to 5 articles this month articulating the exploitation that has happened in Haiti for over hundreds of years. Do you want to talk about the U.S. Marines that went into Haiti and killed the leader and took over the government and forced the constitutional change so that they could give their land, because their constitution said they could only give their land to black people? Do you want to tell about that too? Do you want to talk about how Citibank, the bank that exists in the United States, has taken billions of dollars stolen worth of gold that still exists in America? Do you want to talk about that, Pastor Henderson? Do you want to talk about how Haiti had to pay for their freedom to France that bankrupted the nation billions of dollars? Do you want to talk about that history? Do you want to talk about the current conditions of Haiti and the assassination of the president, and how today the United States is trying to conceal agents in the DEA that were on the payroll, that were involved in the assassination? Pastor Henderson, you sure you want to open the door to talk about spirits when you don't even have half of the story right? We have to be responsible with our words. We have to be responsible with the information we give. And people who've been through hell, not just Haitians, but the first Haitians were African, from West Africa. You talk about the Dominican and Haiti, they were one people. What are you talking about? Pastor Henderson, you opened your mouth in public. You shared it with hundreds of thousands of people. And I'm not going to let you off the hook where you're going to give a private apology on Instagram on a comment. You have to go back to your pulpit and correct the wrong information you gave today. Because black people, African people, and all folks around the world have been through hell. And if you're going to try to think it was just a Haiti thing, no. The same African traditions and customs and rituals and people are all around the world. In Brazil, in South America, in Asia, and in the Middle East, especially in America. And we're not going to allow white supremacy theology to creep into the black church especially and demonize our ancestors. For the record, you would not be here, Pastor Henderson, if it wasn't for our ancestors who blood shed for the liberation that you can even get on your pulpit and preach a misguided message. So be careful before you demonize our ancestors for the sake of performance. Church, tell the truth, and you owe the Haitian and African people an apology.